Okay, ladies, who taught you how to take a selfie? Was it your mom or your big sister who taught you that you should always look your best because you just never know? Or maybe it was a Kardashian on Instagram who taught you through their dedication to collagen and Photoshop what it really meant to be on fleek. Maybe nobody in your life directly taught you how to take a selfie, but I'm sure someone along the way has had something to say about the way you chose to present yourself. You look so pretty when you smile. Typical women chase unattainable cultural expectations about the way they look, act, and feel every day because they are well aware of the fact that it is much easier to achieve their goals when they shut up and look pretty. But what happens when the cultural expectations you've been trying so hard to attain are different from that of a typical woman? What happens when the expectations you are facing are rooted in abusive ideologies? When the abuses of Dr. Larry Nassar became public and 150 brave survivors shared their stories, the monster was put behind bars for life. New York Times editorials sentencing Larry Nassar as only a start attempts to extend the blame beyond the perpetrator by questioning the integrity of the institutions, colleagues, and employers that allowed his abuses to continue. Although this is a solid step towards justice for survivors, this editorial failed to discuss how the tyrannical culture at the Caroli Olympic Training Ranch in Huntsville, Texas, created the perfect environment for a soft-spoken, deceptively sweet Larry Nassar to prey on vulnerable young girls. In Joan Ryan's NBC Hot Take, published on January 22, 2018, shortly after Larry Nassar was sentenced, she calls attention to her own work published in 1995 titled Little Girls in Pretty Boxes. This revealed in detail the systemic child abuse taking place in elite gymnastics. Everything from the frequency of eating disorders to the reluctance of the athletes to seek emotional support was effectively correlated with the intense pressures applied at the Caroli Ranch. Knowing the girls were terrified of their coaches, Larry Nassar had the perfect opportunity as team doctor to use his alone time with the athletes to his sexual advantage. The facts were there, the testimonies were emotionally loaded, and the pressure to be perfect proved to take a serious toll on the health of these young girls. The interview started in 1995, and the evidence has only stacked since then, making the author of my original editorial perfectly capable of using this information to explain how the indifferent colleagues were seasoned to ignore the suffering and allow Dr. Larry Nassar to go about his abusive behavior. Although she's well aware of the answer, Joan poses a question to her readers. Why has change taken so long? The answer is rather simple in her eyes. After interviewing Bella Caroli of the Caroli training camp in 1995 and presenting the horrid details of the victim testimonies, Bella adamantly denied the presence of any abusive ideologies or practices. He insisted that the testimonies were given by, quote, athletes who could not accept their own failure and sought to place the blame elsewhere. This was Joan Ryan's moment of clarity in which she realized that an alternate form of reality was being accepted at the ranch, while the painful reality of the athletes, riddled with starvation and shame, was being undermined and ignored. Cries of hunger and discomfort were left unaddressed and regarded as the price of success. If someone is conditioned to believe that any form of suffering is just part of the process, one can only imagine how difficult it would be for them to come to terms with the fact that they've been seriously abused. When we look at the way survivors of abuse are treated within our own legal system and social sphere, it's clear to see that a similar culture of victim shaming has run rampant in recent years. Women are commonly asked what they were wearing when they were abused, as if men are sexually driven, animalistic beings who have no hope of being controlled. Maybe, if more conversations about victim shaming and the way we treat survivors had taken place, recent proposals to ban leotards in competitive gymnastics in an attempt to stop the spread of abuse would have been seen in all their outlandish glory. Olympic survivor Aly Raisman spoke out on these proposals, citing that they directly feed into our country's problem of victim shaming. This proves that a public conversation about the source of our twisted ideas is crucial in the prevention of future incidents. The editor had the perfect opportunity to open this conversation, yet it was completely missed. The indifferent attitudes of Nassar's colleagues deserve to be addressed, but the editor's failure to discuss the source of these attitudes and acknowledge the abusive culture at the Caroli Ranch is a reflection of our society's inability to think introspectively about the standards we hold women to. In order to initiate real change, indifference should not simply be condemned. It should be traced back to the source where the foundation of its horrors can be corrected before they creep into the norms of a culture.